Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.
October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and Connie was just telling me she's been very busy this month, so speaking all over the place. And we have Eileen, who has recommended having Connie here. She saw her speak, so thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Connie's going to tell her story of dealing with breast cancer. She wrote a book, How Connie Got Her Rack Back. She says people really like the cover, she was telling me. But so here's Connie Bramer to tell us about her book and her it's a breast cancer memoir.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really blessed to be here. My name is Connie Bramer, and I am a breast cancer survivor. Could you speak up? Sure. My name is Connie Bramer, and I'm a breast cancer survivor.
Can you hear her?
I live in Clifton Park. I grew up in Northville on the Sacandaga Lake, so I'm a local girl. I am the 4th generation in my family to have breast cancer. So my diagnosis did not come as a huge surprise, however morbid that may sound. I was expecting it at some point. I just was not expecting it at 39. I had just turned 39. So it's funny how when you become diagnosed with breast cancer, you get thrown into a club of sorts. Not one of your choosing, but similar in kinship to what you might find in a college sorority. And I know all about that because I was one of those. But instead of drinking and partying and being carefree, you find comfort in knowing that you're not alone in seeking life-saving surgeries and chemotherapy or radiation. You know that there's other women that are experiencing that with you. As women, we do what we have to do to be here, to be mothers and daughters, wives, sisters, and friends. And for me, my greatest role is that of mother. My kids are 11 and 12, and when I was ill, they were 7 and 8 years old, so they were very small. For me also, my other role in my house is chief embarrassing officer of my family, as my kids often point out with their eye rolls. I'm sure my story is not so different from many other women who have had breast cancer. The day before I received my diagnosis, I believed I would have a better chance of seeing a flying unicorn out the window than to hear the words, "You have breast cancer." Again, I was expecting it at some point. I just was not expecting it at 39. In my book, I write about the day of my diagnosis. I want to read you a little something. Most people need a Xanax to relax. Me, I need a good cup of coffee. I sit on the chair, sipping my coffee in my fabulous gown, and read all of the breast cancer statistics on the wall. Nothing like some thought-provoking literature to make you even more stressed out while you wait. I sit there thinking of my mother, as I do so often. Here in spirit, I say to her, "Mom, it's not my time for this yet." She knows what I'm talking about wherever she is. This was her battle too, a valiant effort in her fight, but lost nonetheless. I lost my mom at the age of 53, and I was 26 years old, and my brother was 23 years old. So it was a very devastating loss, and I know what that struggle was like for her with her breast cancer, and so I was about to endure the same thing. Time has a way of stopping in its place, like a watch with no moving hands. It's hard to imagine that the morning of my diagnosis, I was worried that my lollygagger son would miss the school bus, and I would have to drive him to school in my pajamas. Months later, I would drive him to school with a $300 squirrel on my head, so the pajamas would not have been so bad. In fact, I think I did at one point wear the squirrel and the pajamas to school, and I walked right in there and signed him into school. I think he was a little bit embarrassed. But such silly things we worry about. What do you do when you're diagnosed with breast cancer? I thought about going down to my basement and hiding behind the furnace with a big bowl of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Then I realized my kids would inevitably find me and accuse me of taking the last of the mint chocolate chip ice cream. So I decided, like most breast cancer patients, that I would have to face it head on and come up with a plan. We are dealt the cards we're dealt. It's really how we shuffle them that counts. That said, a plan to address my new reality needed to be hatched. a lumpectomy or a mastectomy. Which is the best way to go? Every diagnosis is different and every patient is different. I decided that I would have bilateral mastectomies, thereby thwarting any thought of a return. My genetic predisposition was not going to rule my fate. I would have a hand in it by virtue of the decisions I was about to make. As a breast cancer patient, you have to step outside of your emotions, which is look at the cold hard facts and make a decision. As a single working mother of two, breast cancer wasn't really part of my master plan. I had 2 little soccer players to coach, play dates to set up, 2nd and 3rd grade science projects to complete, the occasional friends, which is always needed. How would I fit it all in and have breast cancer? It wasn't easy. I know from my own experience, when it comes to a life-changing event, the need to prioritize becomes an integral part of your survival and, most importantly, your sanity. For me, learning to take each day as it came was a new experience. I've always navigated the timing of events and an occasional whim of spontaneity. My new mantra became priority number 1, live. Priority number 2, do all things to ensure the outcome of number 1. And priority number 3 was just everything else. Number 1, live. You'd think that the living part would be easy. How hard is it to get up in the morning, go through your day, go to bed, and do it all over again? Well, now it just wasn't that simple. I would wake up each morning ready for my feet to hit the floor, and I would remember I have cancer. I would meander through my day in a fog, somehow manage to get through it, only to get into bed at night and think, I have cancer, as I tried to close my eyes. The days would have moving parts, but my mind became the watch with no hands. The mind has a way of trapping you in a very small space, concentrating your thoughts in one direction. The difficulty lies in moving your thoughts from having cancer to some happy place. And this is my happy place. Like lying on a beach with the surf lapping at your feet and a cabana boy named Roberto ready with a suntan lotion. I have come to personally know that the mind is not always your friend, especially when you are faced with an illness. If only there were an off switch to shut it down and not think about it. To help me maintain what little sanity I had and give my friends the inside track on how I was doing, I started an online journal, a place where I could write down my thoughts and my friends and family could write me back. I could express my feelings, the good, the bad, even the ugly, and chronicle my crazy cancer journey. Writing about my experiences was cathartic and an incredible coping mechanism. Journaling through the Caring Bridge website helped me to transform my feelings into words. The culmination of all my journal writings eventually became my memoir, How Connie Got Her Rack Back. It was extremely important to me to find situations to laugh and write about on a daily basis. Comedy became my best friend along my journey, and I can say with clarity that laughter really is the best medicine. Somehow I, like many breast cancer patients before me, found the strength to get through whatever my dream team of doctors dished out to me in my priority number 2 stage. To ensure I did indeed live, I had to become a staple in many doctors' offices, subjecting myself to treatments I never thought I would have the strength to endure. Potions of adriamycin, Cytoxan, Taxol, and Taxotere became my cure, bringing with them bouts of nausea, orange pea, headaches, and a weakness to my body that I just never had experienced before. This soon shall pass, I would tell myself, and it did. While you're in it, the days feel as if they go by as slow as a worm making a commute into downtown Albany. But when I look back on it, it really is just a blip in my timeline. While I was going through my treatments, I still had a knack for embarrassing my children. I do that daily. I want to share with you a passage from my book. It is my story of the blue hat. And I brought it with me to give you a visual. Okay. A couple of nights ago, this is from March 17th, 2009. That was in the throes of my treatments. A couple of nights ago, the kids were helping me try scarves on. Let me tell you, I looked like a complete spaz trying to tie these scarves on my head. So Alyssa, my daughter, says, "Mom, where's that ugly blue hat?" She takes it out of my closet and stuffs all of her hair in it and prances around my room, and it really was hilarious. It has this whacked out flower thing on the side, and it's as big as her cheek. She gets my camera and says, "Mom, take my picture." Well, this leads to Alex, my 7-year-old son at the time, trying on the hat, which with his boy pajamas with little race cars on, added a whole new level of hilarity. The three of us were laughing so hard we were howling. Now all three of us have a picture of ourselves wearing the ugly blue hat and a very comical memory, and I put those pictures in my book. So we get done cracking up about it, and I say to Alyssa kiddingly, if you don't behave, I'm going to pick you up from Y Time, which is our after-school program, wearing this blue hat. And she says, Mom, I would die. I would never be able to show my face again. So this little exchange reminds me so much of myself with my mother. I can't believe at age 8, I'm on my way to embarrassing her already. So I picked them up at Y Time yesterday, and Alyssa says to me, Mom, where's the blue hat? And I say, I have spared you a day of humiliation. She raises her eyebrow at me, and she can do it, I can't raise my eyebrow, but she raises her eyebrow at me as if in a dare, and I will tell you it is on. I am going to wear that blue hat to pick her up. I've turned into my mother, and for that and all I am going through, I just laugh and laugh. My mother, wherever she is laughing and saying, you get back what you dish out, kid. And I guess I deserve it, but I might as well have as much fun with it while I can, right? I'm going to pick my children up today and embarrass them, maybe. So that was my journal entry. So I'm sure you're all wondering if I wore the blue hat, so I have to demonstrate. Is the Pope Catholic? Of course I wore this hat. So I poofed it up, and I had no hair underneath here either. So you have to imagine like complete baldness with this up. So I drove over to school to the Y Time to pick them up. And I walk in, and my daughter's eyeballs were just about to pop out of their socket. She's like, and my son just totally cracked up. So the lesson here is that, no matter what you're faced with, even if it's the most difficult situation like cancer, it's important to appreciate the little things, especially moments where laughter is shared. So that was my lesson that day with the blue hat. And that's always been my life lesson, and where I put myself out every day is to say, I need to find something to laugh about, even when I was in the throes of my illness. So this hat will live in posterity in my house. So oftentimes, I would find myself alone in my comedy. Like the day I sat in bed with my computer on my lap as I worked, and I let too much time pass between keystrokes, and I saw my reflection in the computer screen. It was then that I realized I was a dead ringer for Uncle Fester from the Addams Family. Or maybe his twin sister. Or the time I was driving up to the intersection of Route 9 and 146 in Clifton Park, and I took my sunglasses off because they were starting to hurt my head and they were underneath my wig, and as I took them off, my wig turned completely sideways on my head, and I was at the intersection. So there were no cars behind me, it was just me facing all these people. So I look across the way, and there's this guy standing there, and he's going like this. So I think nothing of it, and I turn it back to where it's supposed to go, and he's still looking at me, and I went. So, life throws us all so many curveballs. Some we catch and some we miss. And I think it's important to find the comedy in the misses and not always concentrate on the loss of the catch. I finished my chemo late in the May of 2009, and I would like to share another story from my adventure. And this is in my book. I have a lot of funny stories in my book. It seems like crazy things are always happening to me. So later on that summer, I start to get my freak back. My chest expanders are filled with saline in preparation for my implants, and I am feeling more comfortable in my clothes. Looking at me, no one would know I have been sick, except of course for the wig. My brother comes up from North Carolina with his wife, and we decide to head up to Saratoga for dinner. They come to pick me up, my brother and his wife, her sister and boyfriend. We pile in the car, head up to Saratoga, and we have to park really far away from Broadway because it's, Saratoga in August. So we head downtown on foot, and I'm feeling pretty good. The post-chemo fog seems to have subsided, and I'm wearing this cute little sundress and heels, and I'm thinking I look pretty fabulous, right? So as we walk down a side street, I duck under a tree branch, and it was like if there was a sound effect, it would go whoosh. My wig catches on a tree branch, literally flies like whoosh, off my head, and I look back, and I'm bald in a sundress and heels, and the wig is hanging like this in the tree, and then falls to the ground. And I look at all my family, and they're like, they just didn't know what to say. They were so mortified for me. Well, I laughed. I was the bald chick on the street with all of these people walking by, and I was just laughing. I was bent over, and I swear I must have had like that much hair on my head, and that's probably being generous because it was just starting to come back. But I just laughed the whole time. So my brother calls me Cone. I shouldn't disclose that, but he used to call me Cone Head when I was a kid. So he calls me Cone. He's like, Cone, get the wig, get the wig. So I get the wig, and I'm putting it on my head. And when you put a wig on, it does not go on like you think hair looks. It's just nuts when you first put it on. So you have to comb it and style it. So there I am on the side street looking in the window of a Jeep Cherokee, because I remember this car, it was a black Jeep Cherokee, and I'm smoothing my hair down, and people are looking at me, but I just laughed the whole time. So we got to dinner that night, and everyone's quiet, we're enjoying our meal, and I just burst out laughing. I just cracked up the whole night. I couldn't stop laughing about it. So it was a very, very funny story. So at the insistence, and one of the other things I want to tell you too is if Tom Bergeron had been around from America's Funniest Home Videos, I for sure would have won that $100,000. And I really could have used it. So my brother and I were thinking, I wonder if we could do a do-over. Do you think we could get the element of surprise? And then none of us had a video camera, so we weren't able to do it, but it was pretty funny. So at the insistence of my friends, I compiled my journal entries into a book, and it really was for my own healing. And I had a mission with it too, to help other people. And I wanted people to know that you can have breast cancer and you can be fine. And it doesn't ruin your life. It's not the end of your life. And there's treatments, and there's all different treatment regimes that are available to people. And it's a livable diagnosis. And I just wanted people to see that. So I wrote my stories, and I put them all in a book. And I partnered with the American Cancer Society. So a portion of proceeds from my book helps to fund Hope Club, and also for research in our area. And this past year, right after my book, I guess debuted, I call it, I had what's called the first annual Get Your Rack Back event. So I held that in May, and we had silent auction items, we had wonderful food and a band, and we raised over $4,400 for the American Cancer Society. So it's really important to me that we give back, and we do this because I don't want my daughter to be the 5th generation in my family to have breast cancer. So the support we receive from our communities really is astounding. And I survived my own journey without reaching out to others because I felt I could do it on my own. And upon becoming well, I just really felt it my duty to pay this forward in some way, whether it's through my books or through telling my story or to speaking to other women. Now looking back, I see that it takes more courage to seek help when you're in the trenches than it does to offer assistance after you dig yourself out. So what have I learned about myself through my journey? I am strong, and I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. I looked breast cancer square in the face, and I stared it down. And my gift for the privilege of enduring everything else that came my way is all that priority number 3 encompasses, which was everything else that I put off to the side. My children, my family and friends, life, love, and experiences now that I treasure more than I ever did the day I wished I'd almost seen a unicorn. So I wanted to share with you a couple other stories from my book. I have wonderful doctors that I kind of poke fun of. Everyone always wants me to read this story. Okay. I call it the breast men. While at my biopsy last week, Deborah had called on my behalf and set up an appointment for me with a general surgeon and a plastic surgeon, my beloved breast men. How many people get to say that, really? So she set up an appointment for me to have an MRI to assess the overall cancer damage, had it spread to my lymph nodes. The MRI would give my breast surgeon an indication if it had spread. I have never had an MRI. My son, as an infant, had to have one. And I remember sitting in the room with him while the onslaught of machine gun fire sounds deafened me. And I'm sure if any of you have had an MRI, you know it's just, if they're gonna make that machine and spend millions of dollars, it should be quiet, I'm thinking. So here I am getting my own MRI. I am as close to being claustrophobic as one could be without a Xanax to cope. Good thing it is an open-ended MRI, or I may have needed multiple doses of anti-anxiety medication. Again, on with the hospital gown. A male nurse comes over to put my IV in, and I really hate needles. As I sit there, I have a defeatist moment when the realization hits me that this is only the beginning of the needle action. There will be so many needles in my future, I will become a human pincushion sans the outer felt layer. I tell the nurse that I recently had a biopsy and there are markers in my breast where the tumors are located, and they are metal clips that they put in when they do a biopsy. I have visions, and this is kind of gross, but I have visions of these metal things pulled out of the magnet by the MRI. A virtual bloodbath of breast tissue decorating the noisy machine. At least then, I think, the decor would match the sounds of war emanating from the machine with each picture. He assures me there will be no problems. He instructs me to lie face down with my breast each in a hole. Another great visual. Specifically engineered for optimal breast imaging. You're kidding me, right? It reminds me of those wooden carnival cutout type things where the face and arms are cut out and you put your own in and wave at the camera. But instead of my face beaming and arms waving at the camera, it's a breast photo op. The sound of gunfire commences and the imagery is well underway. I lie there in the most awkward of poses, my IV arm over my head, the tubing attached to the IV bowl. The nurse clutches the IV post and says, "You're doing great, sweetie. Just a few more pictures." And I say to myself, "Sure, slick. Your boobs aren't hanging down in a mold." So the MRI finally ends, and I will have to wait for results. My mother always used to tell me that having cancer is like being in the Army. Hurry up and wait. First of all, what my mother would know about being in the Army, I do not know. If she ever had to step foot in an Army barracks, she would demand that every man turn over his whites and handkerchiefs, and then she would make me iron them. Every Saturday morning when I was a kid, I helped my mother iron. And seriously, we would make cookies and I would iron. It was fun now that I think about it. Good God, she made me iron my father's handkerchiefs, and all I could think about while I was ironing was, my father blows his nose in this thing over and over and over. Does he not know what tissues were made for? I digress. Yes, my mother had a point. You do hurry up and wait. The reality is that the hurrying takes more time than the word connotes. The testing seems to take forever, thus far in the process anyway. The waiting, well, that's a whole other story. The waiting is cumbersome, almost like the last few months of pregnancy when you feel like you might explode. With that comes the fear, will I be a good mother? Will I know what to do when she cries? As opposed to this new waiting I'm experiencing, will I need chemotherapy? Will I be okay? These latter thoughts drive my mind into a quiet frenzy. There is no outlet, only more waiting. My first breast man visit is with Dr. B, my breast surgeon. I called him the removal guy. I am told by Deborah and other nurses at the health center that not only is he an amazing surgeon, he is great eye candy as well. I figure, hey, if I'm going to have to go through all this, I might as well have something good to look at. My father and his wife accompanied to the surgeon's office to find out my fate. I can tell you that before we even get there, whatever options he presents, I'm having both girls removed. I call them the girls. Girls removed. Like the burn marks on toast that you scrape off to rid yourself of the taste, I will do the same with my cancer. No bad cancer aftertaste. I will have none of it. I asked my father and his wife to sit in the waiting room while I am seen. Dr. B walks in, and yes, Deborah was right. Eye candy for the masses. Unlike most surgeons and their matter-of-fact mentalities, Dr. B is so caring and kind as he apprises me of my circumstances after my examination. We chat for a bit, and he agrees that with my family history, my best option is for a bilateral mastectomy. My MRI showed no lymph node involvement, which is a real positive. He tells me that the mastectomies will be 95% of my recovery. But instead of thinking, oh great, my methodical mind is churning over the other 5%. What is that going to be? Well, I will soon find out. So it turns out that when I had my mastectomies, they did an under the microscope look at my axillary nodes. And I did have a positive lymph node. So I did my bilateral mastectomies to rid myself of my cancer, and then I did the chemotherapy as a life insurance policy so I would still be here to embarrass my kids. So once it's in your lymph node, they ask you to to have chemotherapy done. So I had 4 months of chemotherapy, and I wanted to read you a little bit about that too. And I'm sorry I didn't bookmark ahead of time. Okay, well, I do want to tell you one story. This is entitled Scars and a Little Self-Loathing. This is about after my mastectomies. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror as I got out of the shower one day. Nude flesh from the neck down, scars diagonal across my chest on both sides, my very own, I guess I would call it a scarlet letter, a hieroglyphics version that I pray will fade. I think then of my mother's scar from her own mastectomy, which was many, many years ago. How had she felt? No reconstruction, just an L-shaped scar, a constant reminder of her own mortality. I look at my scars and am reminded of much the same, but know that eventually I will be restored on some level. I will never be what I was before the cancer, but somehow I think I will be better. Better in the sense that I have looked death in the face and kicked its arse. I'm doing a little bleeping here. I know that I have a long journey ahead, and I am mentally preparing myself for the ride. Sometimes I think it would be great if I could just sleep until the journey is over. Then I won't feel a thing. I can be a spectator in my own life for a bit, much like my ex-husband during our marriage. But the reality is that if I don't actually face it, then what am I really going to gain from the journey? Months from now, I wouldn't be able to look someone in the eye who was about to embark on the same painful adventure and be relatable. There has to be a reason I am dealing with this, and not just because of my genetic predisposition. I look at the drain hanging from my chest, and I didn't tell you this, but when you have mastectomies, you have drains hanging from your chest to drain fluid. And they were very heavy, and I had to put them in a fanny pack so that I could walk around. So I look at the drain hanging from my chest, and as I hold it up and I get dressed, it hurts as it hangs there, stitched to the side, but much the same as a garden hose attached to my house, which said hose will be later run over by my snowblower that winter. I ran over my hose on my house, and it was attached to the house. Okay, so I wanted to read to you something on Friday, February 6th of 2009. The drain is out. I have to say that it's just not natural to have tubes sticking out of your chest, not to mention that it is completely uncomfortable. I told my plastic surgeon today that after everything I have been through, going through with the boob situation, I better be getting a huge discount on liposuction. He said, absolutely. I'll have to check back on that when I'm done with the boob job. You never realize until you are in a health crisis just how much you tend to take your good health for granted. Complaining over the little things in life just seems so stupid now. Who cares if there are clothes all over my daughter's room, and who cares if her beds aren't made? It's not like Martha Stewart's coming over. You can't sweat the small stuff. I try this approach to things, but I still fight myself mentally about cleaning up. Then my tiredness wins out, and I grab a big bowl of ice cream and head for the couch. This I know will catch up with me, the ice cream eating bit. Every day I think we need to look at where we are and be grateful. And this really was a life-changing moment I write about right here in my journey. I saw the story of a woman on Oprah this week who went into the hospital to give birth to her second child. She ended up having an infection that caused her limbs to turn black, and they had to be amputated, both her arms and her legs. And it was from her elbow down and from her knees down, she had to have amputations done. This incredible woman is such an inspiration. With prosthetics and pure will, she is a wife and mother and cares for her family. Her story was truly amazing. And just an hour before watching that show, I had one of my 5-minute meltdowns about not having boobs. I felt like a complete idiot, a complete selfish moron. Amidst all of this crap I am dealing with, I can do the small things, like paint Alyssa's nails and braid her hair and help Alex put his Legos together. What's worse is that sometimes I don't feel like doing these things, and I put in parentheses, horrible mother. And I think about this woman who would give anything to be able to do what I can do and what so many others can do every day. So basically, I tell myself, buck up and deal. I am grateful for where I am, even if it's not where I want to be. And I tell my kids this every day, because it's important that you take stock and realize where you are and where others could be. I would like to be able to extend my left arm all the way, but I can't since my lymph node surgery. It's painful, but I'm going to start physical therapy, so it will get better. My chest looks like a cross between a 12-year-old girl on one side and a 7-year-old boy on the other. I had to have an emergency surgery, so I had one breast for a while. I don't want to look at it, but I know that eventually that will get better too. I will lose my hair, but it will grow back. It will all get better. I know this. But I keep thinking about that woman who doesn't have easy fixes for her physical problems. It just really makes you think. I'm skimming in here. I'm sorry I didn't bookmark these. Okay. This is my journal entry after my very first chemotherapy. Sunday, February 15, 2009. Well, I seem to have made it through my first treatment. My stiff upper lip theory didn't quite make it. Aside from becoming one with the porcelain god yesterday, I seem to have come through this unscathed. I cannot remember ever sleeping so much in my entire life. Take a pill, sleep, take a pill, sleep. Almost like drinking till 4 in the morning in college and sleeping till 2 in the afternoon. My mother could never quite understand that logic. Who sleeps past noon, she would say to me. So today, day 4 after chemo, I am feeling normal, although what is normal, and certainly what is my normal? I have to take a break from being the schizoid cleaner I usually am. What's a few dust bunnies? As long as they don't get up and hop, who cares? I'm going to order my wig tomorrow. And just so I don't have a freak fest over losing my hair, I may shave my head once I get it. I know I will be bald by my next treatment, so I have been checking my pillowcase every morning like a lunatic. Every lost hair is one step closer to baldness. I could get a robe, wear a medallion, and head to the airport to spread the word, whatever that is. I have to laugh at the number of prescription bottles on my counter. I may have to start alphabetizing them. It's starting to look like a spice cabinet, which, by the way, is not alphabetized, so it is a total cluster. It's not so good to accidentally grab Compazine instead of Claritin, an allergy medicine, just so you wouldn't want to accidentally put cinnamon in your soup instead of paprika. The one thing I would be happy to get rid of is the metallic taste in my mouth from the chemotherapy. The only thing that seems to help is chocolate. How tough is my life? So I bought a bag of robin's eggs the other day, those little Whoppers they have for Easter. I put them neatly in the pantry, and my daughter accidentally spilled the entire bag on the floor, well, half of it. She cleaned them off the floor, and Alex took the rest of the bag and said, "Mom, can I have some?" And I was on the phone, and these kids, they always seem to talk to you when you're on the phone, right? So I held up my fingers like you could have 2. So the little stinker ate the whole bag and left me 2. So while I was sick, I had to hide M&Ms in my room so my kids couldn't find them. And it was funny because when I was better, we were cleaning my room and they found the stash. So now they have a nice secret stash compartment. So I wrote in here, forget getting a locked cabinet for alcohol when they're teenagers. I need the locked cabinet now for the chocolate. This week, I am hopefully going to start chemotherapy for my arm. It will be nice to get some range of motion back. I haven't exercised in weeks, and my Bollywood video, that's a crazy belly dancing video, is waiting for my return. Alyssa and I get a total kick out of it, and it's really a challenge. I have to work off the chocolate I'm eating. I have to get busy writing thank you notes. Everyone has been so generous. Meals, gifts, notes, thank yous, and thank you so much for all of them. And one of my sorority sisters sent me this, you know those, I forget what they're called. You wrap your hand, you put your arms in them. A Snuggie or something? A Snuggie? I think they're Snuggies. Well, my girlfriend from college got me one that has breast cancer ribbons on it. And it is the best. It's so warm, and my kids, the 3 of us, we fight over it. Still. So the thing's starting to look a little dilapidated. So my friends all wrote me back in this journal, and I included a lot of the things that they said in here. And having people talk to you, but not call you all the time and email you, how are you doing? It was so great. So I recommend CaringBridge to anyone who's having an illness, because you can go on there and people can write you back You don't have to have a barrage of phone calls and emails. So it was very nice to go on here and look. And one of my girlfriends wrote, "You're not losing it. And if you were, you would be entitled to. You actually sound fantastic. I have heard you sound much worse." So just different things my friends would say. So halfway there, I used to dread going to the oncologist for my mid-counts. Every other week, you go to the doctor to have your blood checked. And the very first time I did that, my oncologist was not in, and I had to see another oncologist in the practice. And he said to me, "I'm very concerned about your white blood cell count." So I laughed in my journal, and I don't know where it is in here, but I wrote, "It's a good thing I didn't tell him about the 2 Manhattans I had the night before and the wine." So if your blood count is low, they automatically put you in the hospital. So I didn't have to do that, so that was good. But every other week, you go for your mid-counts. So I was just writing about halfway there through my treatment. I used to dread going to the oncologist for my mid-counts. For one, I was sick of the drive there. Second, it was like checking in with Dr. Death every other week. My health tied into a number driven by white blood cells. The announcement of the count was preceded with, "How are you feeling?" If I could part from niceties, and I will bleep this out, I would say, "How the H-E double hock sticks," as my kids say, "do you think I feel? I've been poisoned as if attacked by venomous snakes, and then had to spend time doing 2nd and 3rd grade homework. How do you think I feel?" Okay, so I may actually have said that to my doctor. But one positive thing about being sick is that they give you a pass on being a little snippy. So I survived my 4th and final AC treatment on Thursday. Woohoo. Now I am halfway through chemo. Thank goodness I am finally turning the corner. I'm still feeling a bit tired and run down from my last treatment, but overall I am just so happy it is over with. From what I hear from other patients and the nurses in my oncology office, the last 4 treatments of Taxol should be a breeze compared to what I've been through. The Taxol will come with the extreme nausea of the AC, but it comes with other side effects. So I asked my oncologist what the side effects were. And he named all of these medical things. And I said, "Listen, I just want to know how it's going to make me feel." So he said, "You'd be tired, you get tingling in your fingers, and some people have anaphylactic shock." So I got in the car on the way home and I thought, holy cow, am I going to have anaphylactic shock? And actually the woman next to me when I got my first treatment had that reaction. So it was very, very scary. So I wrote, "My poor oncologist. This past week, I was in one of my going to ask him a million questions moods. I asked him when I would be getting my chemo poured out. And in case you don't know what that is, it's a plastic thing that's hooked up to a vein above your clavicle so that they can give you your chemotherapy. And it was right here, and it was I think it's called the sextagon, the 6 shape, the 6-sided thing right in my chest. And I have to tell you, it is annoying and totally uncomfortable. And I want it out ASAP. I'm thinking since I am in the home stretch, I want to know when I'm going to have my expander put back in and when I can get this poured out." So his answer to my question was, "I'd like to keep the port in for another year." And my response was, "Are you on crack?" This thing is coming out as soon as my blood count was good enough for surgery. And he obliged, I got it out, but I do know a lot of people keep it in for quite a while, and they keep it in because they think, if you have a reoccurrence, we want to be able to get back in there. And I just thought, you know what, I'll deal with it. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. So I said, I don't want to even think about that, and if that does happen, I'll have another one put in. The mission here is how Connie got her boobs back. And I was telling some of you earlier, I changed the name to Rack Back because I didn't think boobs, they would put boobs on a bookshelf. So I changed that. So the long and the short of it is, it's coming out as soon as possible. I want to get back to normal as soon as possible. So I will say that I think I am back to normal. And it was a very long journey, and it was worth the ride, if that even sounds plausible. Because by telling my story, I know that I've been helping other women to endure what they're about to endure, and that gives me, it fills my cup and makes me feel good that I can tell people that there is a light at the other end of the tunnel, and that the climb is steep, but the walk down is a lot faster and you get there. So thank you so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Then, actually, I was diagnosed 4 years ago next month. And really, I was talking to another cancer patient at the breast cancer walk on Sunday, and she was saying to me, it just seems like while you're in it, it just is so long. The days are long, and it's, I just need to get through the next day. But when you look back on it and you've done it, I can't believe it's been 4 years. 4 years ago, I heard those horrible words, you have breast cancer, and in December, I had surgery. Actually, I had surgery when we had that horrible ice storm we had 4 years ago. Do you remember that, when all the electricity was out? So my doctor actually kept me in the hospital for an extra day because I had no electricity at home and no heat. And he said, I can't send you home to no heat. And all of my friends had no electricity either, and no one had a generator. So my boyfriend at the time went out and bought a generator, and then I was able to go home. So that was how long ago it was. So it's been 4 years. I'm doing great.
How about your daughter? Does she ask a lot of questions, and how do you answer?
My daughter is very concerned, although she might not say it to me a lot. I know she has said something to one of my friends that she's worried that she's going to have breast cancer. I think that when my kids found out and I told them, I used a book called The Paper Chain, and really is such a power in book and pictures. And I used the paper chain to tell them that I had cancer. And I've always been honest with my kids, and my mother passed away before I ever was married and had my kids. So they knew she passed away from breast cancer. So when I told them, my daughter just was so upset because she knew that it was what my mother had. But we do talk about it, and we talk about the importance of why we raise money for this and awareness. And, with my book, I partnered with the American Cancer Society, like I was saying, because I want to have money to go towards the research and services for women. We need to talk more about it. So my kids are part of my team, my Get Your Act Back team. Whenever we do things, they help me, and they know that it's important that we do this and talk about it and have events. But to talk more specifically about my daughter, I am going to be tested for the gene, and I would say 95% sure I have the gene if I'm the 4th generation in my family. So I'm going to be tested for the gene, and when she's old enough, I'm going to have her be tested for the gene, and hopefully at that time we have a cure. Yeah.
How was the treatments in your mother's time?
My mother's cancer was advanced, and she was a nurse, and she'd had tons of biopsies done. And she had another tumor that she figured was just another, fibrocystic cyst, and she didn't really do anything about it. And it got to a point where it twisted her breast, and they say that when cancer is near the surface, it can pucker skin, and that's what happened to my mother. So she went about 6 or 7 months without doing anything about it, and that makes me so upset. But that's where I learned that you need to be, you need to stick up for yourself when it comes to your health. But anyway, she had to have mastectomy, she had chemotherapy, and she was diagnosed when she was 46. And she passed away when she was 53, and the entire time she struggled with her breast cancer because it had gone so long that it had spread to other parts of her body. So that's what we were fighting for the last few years before she passed away. But, it's very important as women that we go to the doctor and we have mammograms, and that's another thing. My friends have all said to me, I never had a mammogram before, and when you were diagnosed, I went and got a mammogram. And I was just at the Breast Health Symposium on Tuesday evening at Saratoga Surgical Center, and they have a new type of mammography, and of course you're going to ask me what it is, and I don't know, but it's more of a digitized version of having, right now you get 2 shots, a front and a top side. And now they have a new machine that is able to show it going through, because for me, I have fibrous tissue in my breast, and that's what a lot of people have, dense tissue. And when it's dense, there's many layers in the breast, and you can't see tumors in there because it's white if your breast tissue is dense on a mammogram, and cancer shows white. So they're making so many advances in mammography and in MRIs to look at breast cancer. So you need to get your mammograms. And if you know of a young woman who hasn't, please tell her to get her mammogram.
So do you have a mammogram because of your family history before 40, or did you find it on your own?
I did. I started having mammograms right after my son was born. I had just turned 32. So I started at 32 because they don't want to do them while you're pregnant. So I was pregnant 2 years in a row. My kids are 14 months apart, which my eyes were crossed for a long time. But no, I started having when I was 32. And actually, I did find my cancer. I had had a mammogram 8 months before my cancer was found. So I wasn't due for 4 more months. So I had a pain in my chest, and I'm a side sleeper, and I was laying on my side, and I'm thinking, why is my chest hurting? Like, it should not hurt to sleep. Why is this hurting? And my friends all said, oh, it's fibrocystic breast. Don't worry about it. So I could have just let it go. But, you know, I guess God has a way of stepping in and helping you do with things that you need. And on that Wednesday, it happened on a Sunday. On Wednesday, I happened to have my OBGYN appointment. And had I not, I probably would have let it go, seriously. So I go to my doctor. She does the exam. She doesn't really feel anything. And she said, well, we'll just go get a mammogram anyway. So I went and had a mammogram, and I ended up having to go back, and they found cancer. And it was in 2 spots in my left breast. I had one, they call it in situ, in your duct. And then another part had traveled outside of the duct into my breast near my armpit, and that's how it ended up getting into my lymph node. So in 8 months, where I had had an absolutely clear mammogram, to 8 months after, and had invasive breast cancer, that's scary. So we need to really be doing those self-exams that they teach us to do, and go to your doctor. Go ahead, you had a
That's
question?
what I was going to say, is the self-exams, because I had the mammograms every year. I had the doctor's exam where they checked the breast every year. And I found it myself, and it was very large and quite invasive. And I had not been doing the self-exams, every once in a while. I think about it, but not every month like you should. So I am just telling all my friends, do your self-exams, because you got to do it all. You have to do all 3 of them.
I was wondering along the way, as far as the surgery is concerned, what additional psychological, emotional control did your surgeon provide in the office? I find that some of my friends get no help at all other than surgery, which at the time I think is a tremendous need for professional people to help emotionally, socially, to help you go through.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I belong to a support group in Saratoga that meets at the Molly Wilmot Radiation Center in Saratoga. It's attached to Saratoga Hospital. It's every 3rd Tuesday of the month. And we talk about that, because if you were to have a knee replacement surgery, you meet with somebody and you talk about everything, about what's expected, and you know, your prognosis as far as how long it'll be before you walk, and how long away it'll be before you run. When you do have breast cancer and they do mastectomies, they don't talk about it a lot. They have made a lot of advancements in that since I had it, because when I had it, I love my surgeon dearly. We talked briefly about it, but I didn't know personally that I could have physical therapy, that I would not be able to move my arm after my lymph nodes were removed. I did not know that at all. I got home and I thought, I am in horrific pain, and I never knew it. I didn't know to expect it. So they do talk about that now, because they take what we say to them in our support groups and they bring it back to their practices, and they are doing a better job. And I will tell you that having a nurse navigator is amazing. And 1 in 2 women, or 1 in 2 actual people diagnosed with any type of cancer, reach out to the American Cancer Society. And the American Cancer Society has navigators, patient navigators, and they help you with the resources that you need to inform you of what the processes are, how you're going to feel, how you're going to do. And so does the nurse navigator. That woman, Deborah, that I speak about in my book, she was my nurse navigator, and she explained to me every single thing that was going to happen to me.
So that was sort of your support system.
That was my support system. But like I was telling you earlier, I kind of just put my blinders on and did my own thing, because I didn't want to talk about it with other people. I did my Caring Bridge and I laughed about it. But inside, I had my own questions, and I was worried about things. I didn't want to go to support groups and talk about it. But now I do go to them, and it's important that women talk about it and they have resources. So support groups have been an absolute, great resource.
But they don't all have that in the oncology center.
No, they don't. They don't.
I think.
But they give you the resources. To Life has wonderful support groups. And, you know, CRAB can reach out and get you to certain things. Capital Region Action Against Breast Cancer, they have a lot of wonderful resources, as does American Cancer Society with Hope Club, Susan G. Komen. There's so many places that we can reach out to get support. Anybody else?
Other questions? Thanks for sharing the story with us, Connie.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it so much.
One quick question, will you sign books?
Yes, absolutely. And my website is called getyourrackback.com. So you have to check that out and look. But thank you so much. I do have books here to sell if you'd like to buy a book. They're $20 each, and a portion of proceeds goes to the American Cancer Society.